Arkansas.
Hi there, thank you very much. I know the hour's late, but it's good to be here. I appreciate everybody's patience. You know, I've got two classmates from law school here tonight, Michael Joe and Steve Park. And I think a lot of us decided to go to law school because we had an interest in public service. You know, my grandmother was an immigrant to this country, and she saw my mother work very hard in school and go to law school in the 1960s, when it was still rare for women to go to law school. I think when Michael and Steve and I were at UNLV Law School, we were in the minority as men. I think the women outnumbered the men. But it was different back when my mom went to law school and graduated in 1968. When she was admitted to practice law here in Nevada in 1972, there were less than 100 women here practicing in the state. I grew up around the Democratic Party because of my family, because of this history of public service. I went to state conventions as a kid. Somewhere there's a picture of my mom holding me, and youngest Democrat is that. So I was brought up in the party. It was only natural that when I had the opportunity to register to vote in 1990, a little later than Mr. Joe did, he's got a few years on me, I would register Democrat. That's the tradition I was brought up in. But the reason I decided to stay a Democrat was because of the values that the party stands for. In 1994, my mother got elected to the Assembly, and my grandmother was still alive, still an immigrant to this country, and she just bawled crying because it meant so much to her to see her daughter elected to a public office, to be allowed to serve, and to see that even though here she had come with a baby in her arms, that the country she chose to live in had accepted her and her daughter. And I think that made a big impression on me as to what public service means. You know, I got to spend a lot of time with my mom during her years in Carson City. I saw a lot of good bills. Our domestic violence laws now are primarily a result of the work she did. There used to be a statute of limitations on rape, but now there is no statute of limitations, just like murder. If someone is found 20, 30 years later, they can still be prosecuted here in Nevada. Those are things that affected me. Grandparents' rights, that's another big victory that my mom was able to accomplish in terms of letting grandparents have notification when someone comes up for parole. I was pretty influenced by that. In 2006, when I had the opportunity to run, I went and I spoke to Barbara Buckley, and she was the Speaker of the Assembly, and she asked me, she said, "James, why do you want to run? What are your issues? What do you care about?" And at that time, the issues I cared the most about was seeing an end to capital punishment in Nevada and to do something about the effect of money in politics. I wanted public financing of campaigns. And I told Speaker Buckley that. And she said, "James, how are you going to feel when you get to Carson City and you're not able to accomplish any of that?" And I didn't really have a good answer for her. But I did win that election in 2006, and I got to go up to Carson City. And I requested a bill draft that had to do with public financing of elections. Because one thing that worries me, as it's worried some of the other candidates, is the influence of money in politics. I proposed a study to see how we could adopt a system, perhaps like Arizona, for public financing. That didn't go anywhere. There was not a lot of support for that. That first session, I did not attempt any death penalty reform. But it was something that I did talk about with my colleagues, and I've been happy to see that we have tried to work on that in subsequent sessions. I got to co-sponsor a bill with former Assemblyman Anderson and with Assemblyman Sagerblum to try to conduct a study about the costs of the death penalty in Nevada, because it actually costs us more to have capital punishment in the state than it would if we didn't. And we actually passed a bill this last session, but the governor vetoed it. We did have a very fair bill that would not have cost the state much money, that would have directed the legislative auditor to conduct a study on what it costs the state. We weren't going to look at any of the other issues, just at the costs, because that was an avenue that we thought we could convince our Republican colleagues, listen, you may be foursquare in favor of the death penalty, but it is costing our state a great amount. So I'm proud that we've made some headway, and I'm hopeful that we will continue to make a headway. One thing I've learned in 3 sessions in the Assembly is that you don't make changes overnight. It's not going to always be an immediate revolution. Sometimes it's steps towards evolution. But I'm proud of what we've done in that direction. You know, I got to work with Michael Joe last session on the foreclosure issue. And I introduced a bill, modeled after a bill in California and a bill in Maryland, that would have required all the banks and mortgage companies to offer every homeowner a complete chance at a loan modification before they could go forward and file their notice of default. And I almost cried when it passed the Assembly. And I was fortunate to have the support of a great Assemblywoman, Assemblymaster Luca, and all my Democratic colleagues. And believe it or not, I had one Republican Assemblyman who voted for it too. And I think Michael and I couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe that bill passed the Assembly because the banks are very powerful. One thing we've learned up there, one thing I learned up in Carson City, there's 63 legislators, and I think the lobbyists outnumber us probably 10 to 1. When you go up there, you know, it's like it's occupied territory. And they're not all evil people, but they do work for their interests. And one thing I've seen is that people who don't have a lot of money, who don't represent a big voting bloc, they don't have those lobbyists up in Carson City. And that's unfortunate, and that's where it's important. Whoever you vote for is someone who is going to empathize with the people who don't have lobbyists up there. I'm running in District 12, which has changed dramatically. I get to run in Henderson now, and I hope I win the nomination. But, you know, elections come and go, candidates come and go, but the important thing for us Democrats is to make sure that we try to select candidates who can empathize with the people who don't have lobbyists up there. The bill I was talking about on foreclosures got killed in the state Senate. Never made it to the governor's desk. But it's a bill I'm proud of. I'm proud that we got that far. You know, I also got to work on some renewable energy issues, trying to encourage more photovoltaic use. Also did not pass. Something else I'm very proud of. You learn a lot from your successes and your failures up at the legislature. There are votes you wish you could do over, but you do keep learning. And I don't think anyone who runs for the legislature has all the answers. So it's very important, I think, to try to educate your legislators. One thing that I've seen from seeing the process back when my mother was first elected in 1994, when there was no 120-day limit, when the 2/3 requirement for a tax increase wasn't in there, in our Constitution. It was a brilliant move by Jim Gibbons, not because it's good policy, but because it was good for him politically. But what it's left us is with the tyranny of the minority when we get up to Carson City. Because you need 2/3 in each house to pass any kind of a revenue increase, it really does stranglehold the legislature. We've got a bunch of different ballot initiatives on the ballot. I'm hopeful that one of these might pass so that we can try to adequately fund our services here in the state. But it's a sad situation when I think it's unlikely that we're going to get 2/3 in the legislature. And looks like my time might be up. But I'm glad to be here. I'm getting to run in Henderson for the first time, and I'm very excited about that. I did grow up here in Las Vegas. I live up on Sunrise Mountain by the LDS Temple, and certain times I can look out towards the River Mountains, and I'm excited to be running in this area. Thank you.